to make things right. You won't go away.
Hey, well, welcome to Let's Talk with John Kane and Shawnee Rice. Hey, we came in with Murray Porter stand-up. Idle No More. I got my Idle No More shirt on. There we go. If you're listening to us on radio, you have no idea what I just did. But we are also Facebook Live streaming, so we do have video of the show, and that's a good reason to remind people that this show does become a podcast after it's broadcast. You can just search Let's Talk Native Podcast, and it'll have this podcast with my podcast from back home. We also, like I said, we stream this show on Facebook Live video stream. We take that video and we put it up on YouTube, and I have a YouTube channel, which is Let's Talk Native TV. So I encourage you to subscribe to the Let's Talk Native podcast and to the Let's Talk Native TV YouTube channel, and then you can catch this show. The show's back home. I also do some short form videos. Some of them are pretty relevant to things that happen on a daily basis. And in fact, Ruth Bader Ginsburg just took a trip out west, and it was all hyped up about, she got an honorary law degree from UB. I don't know how that helps a Supreme Court justice at 7 years old. I don't know how old she is, but anyway, they hyped up her visit a lot, and of course I had to share my YouTube video on Ruth Bader Ginsburg and the Doctrine of Discovery. That you can find that on the YouTube channel, Let's Talk Native TV. But no, we try to provide not just the videos of the shows, but sometimes shorter form videos that address various subjects. So check out the YouTube channel, subscribe, and again, podcasts you can catch for this show and my show back home, which is Let's Talk Native, on any of your favorite podcast platforms. Look, I want to thank Jeremiah Hosea for joining me last week. Kind of last minute, we had to see if we could put it all together. He called us from where did he call us from again? It was Belarus. Belarus. Yeah, hooked him in via Skype, and we had a great show. It was a good show, and I want to thank not only Jeremiah, I want to thank the callers. We had some really good callers last week. And not that we don't have good callers, but we have some sprinkling of other callers from week to week, and we'll see what we get this week. So again, I want to thank everybody for a good show last week. I also want to mention, after taking a little bit of a break here in the summer on the events that I do downstairs at the Brooklyn Commons, I will be doing an event at the end of September, which is the last Thursday, which is September 26th. I'm going to show Even the Rain. I know I've done that film before, but because it's so close to Columbus / Indigenous Peoples Day, I think it's a perfect film to show. It's a Spanish language film. It is really, really a good film. And if you haven't seen it, which you probably haven't, or if you came out to the last time I screened it here at the Commons, come out again, especially if you're a Spanish speaker, by all means come, because you may be able to help us catch any of the nuances that we miss. And I got to admit, though, I was going to show a different film. I was going to show Dawnland, and we had a couple of you call in about Dawnland. Yeah. The problem is, you can't just buy the DVD, and you can't just. Yeah. They have a lot of tight controls over it, and even to do a free admission screening, they charge like over almost $340, $350, and and that's not kind of what I do here. This isn't. We try to show these films to educate people, and I know the folks who did Dawnland, they do their own screening. So if I find any occasion that they're screening the film here in New York City, I'll certainly promote that so we can all join in. But anyway, that's kind of. Come on down if you're in the mood to cry, because I don't think I have not cried at any one of the film screenings. Well, I'll tell you, Even the Rain it's tough, and the beauty, just to lay a little bit down, it is a film about making a film, and it's not a documentary. It's the plot of the film is that there's this crew making a film about Columbus and the true story of Columbus, the atrocities, all of it. They don't do it in the Caribbean though; they do it in Bolivia because it's cheaper, and of course they use indigenous extras that they pay next to nothing for. Right. And so it almost shows the layers of the racism displayed by Columbus and even the racism displayed by this film crew trying to make a film to expose the racism of Columbus.
The tone deafness of it, yeah.
And then it's layered in with an environmental battle that's going on over water. So the whole water is life, and that's where the name of the film, Even the Rain, because what it is that a multinational corporation is going into Bolivia, which is where the film is shot, to run water lines, which means they're going to charge everybody for water. People who don't even have any money are going to have to pay for water that they've gotten for free. And they're even trying to stop people from collecting rainwater. So that's why the title, ergo the title, Even the Rain. So it is a really good film. They do some great jobs with, again, this layering of everything, really kind of capturing awkwardness that even the film crew doesn't get until they're faced with trying to film certain issues. So the layering is phenomenal. The character development's pretty damn good too. But it is a Spanish language film, so it is English subtitles that you got to kind of keep up with. And so if you've seen it before, see it again, because this is the way that you can really kind of break down the film. And it is a perfect film to have in the run up to October or whatever the date
10th
is.
10th or 11th.
10th and 11th, yeah. So anyway, that's what we're going to do. Just as a farther out reach out, I guess, I've got Young Jibwe coming back to the Commons for Halloween night, which is on the last Thursday of October. So Young Jibwe in October, and I've got Even the Rain coming up next month. So that's what we got to look forward to. All right.
Great.
So now let me get to it. I want to, Shawnee, we missed you for several weeks here, and it's good to have you back. I know that you had a wedding to go to in Hawaii.
Right.
And I don't mean you had to, but that's what brought you there.
What I went there for,
and of course, we do a lot of Hawaii coverage here on this program. We talk a lot about everything from the Hawaiian Kingdom battles to the Mauna Kea battles, and a few fights in between there. So I guess having gotten a chance to really kind of break down whatever might be loaded up by the people who come into the studio, because they come in with a purpose, but just to address the rank and file person on the street or in the taxi cab or on the airplane or whatever else. And I know rank and file is tough because of the military presence there, but just to address the general population that you were able to come into contact with, what's your immediate takeaway?
Okay. Well, my immediate takeaway is different from Mauna Kea. It was the homeless population, because there's a whole loaded background to their homeless population situation. But in terms of Mauna Kea, so every time I stayed in an Airbnb, and they stayed like downtown in the touristy hotel area, because that's where the wedding was. So I had to take public transportation, bus or Ubers, which I did both. So every time I took an Uber, I would talk to the driver, because they talk to you there. I mean, in New York, when you take an Uber, there's no conversation, and it's almost like they're either on their phone or like they're annoyed that we're talking, or the passenger's annoyed, whatever. So I was always like caught off guard when they wanted to have a conversation, and so I always asked, "Are you from here?" Which it's a mixed bag. So it's either people who have moved there, retired there, or people who are from there. And so I was asking them, they asked me what I was doing. I told them I was trying to get out of Mauna Kea, but you have to fly there, because I was on Honolulu and it's on the Big Island, Kauai. So it was going to be like $60, $70 trip, and I'd have to go and come back the same day. So I didn't end up making it out there, but I heard, a lot of mixed reviews of what they thought. I would say maybe like 60% of the drivers, maybe I took like 20 rides, were for protecting Mauna Kea, but wouldn't tell me that off the bat. Like, I had to peel back some of these questions or present myself of like what I do, so they felt safe telling me that they want to protect Mauna Kea. And it was coming into like different layers of the conversation, like, well, why do you want to protect Mauna Kea? And it was never, it was, some of them were like, because this is like indigenous land and this is sacred property, so why would we destroy it? And some were from like a corporate standpoint of like, well, this money isn't going to get to us, so why would we do that? It's going to destroy the land anyway. And then the one that stuck out the most was a driver whose daughter was 14, And he didn't tell me what he thought, but he told me what his daughter thought. And his daughter was 14, was like, well, here's the thing, Dad. The telescope is going to help the future, so we should put it in there. And I was like, what adult is talking to your 14-year-old daughter about the telescope? I mean, maybe the school, maybe the teacher, maybe whoever. Mm-hmm. But how do you think it's going to help Hawaiian youth? Because the money's not going to circulate back to the Hawaiian youth. And the reality is, like, they have 13 telescopes there already, and they pay $1 per telescope per year to have that space on the mountain.
Yay.
Right. So everybody also was like, why do we need to add another one? There are 13 there. Nobody wanted them there. Zuckerberg just bought a whole huge plot of land in Hawaii.
All the beachfront stuff.
No. No, other
more than that.
forested area,
mm-hmm.
which I don't know who knows what his plan is for that. But it was a lot of mixed reviews, and I had to be like, well, I want to go to Mauna Kea, and they're like, well, it's going to be difficult getting there. I'm like, yeah, I know people there, and that's why I'm going. Like, I'm not going for selfies at the top of the mountain. Like, I'm going.
Yeah.
This is why I wanted to go, and I didn't make it. I did climb a crater, which was labeled as easy, and it 1,000% was not easy. I was crab walking on the way down, crawling on the way up. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. But the homeless population... Well, do you want to talk about that first?
No, absolutely.
The homeless population was something I had no idea. So one, I obviously told you I went in there not knowing it was a military hub whatsoever. So there was an insane amount of military presence everywhere, which just like... And because you don't see soldiers in New York with
And there's a direct
on.
connection between the military presence and the homeless population. And part of that is that the military presence has driven up the housing, the cost of housing through the roof, because it's a significant amount that the military pays for the housing there.
Yeah.
So the homeless population is born out of there being a lack of housing and a lack of affordable housing, because on one hand you've got the wealthy that use Hawaii as a playground for themselves, the tourists, and then the military. So the people who are actually from there, especially the people who are there from generationally, are from there. Unless they have somehow found an in into one of those three things, they are on the outside.
So one of my Uber drivers was a soldier from Virginia, and he said, because the military gets different amounts of money per where they're living, and they give him $3,000 a month just for housing.
Yeah.
That's not even, he's like, that's not my base pay. That's not my whatever pays. I can't follow whatever he's talking about, but that's simply for housing. And
so where does that leave somebody who's got to compete for that housing?
So that's the other thing. And because, I was just looking, like, I walked a lot too. And I walked through this one park and I realized, like, oh my God, I'm blatantly not from here. Because the park, which was a tourist location on Yelp or whatever, it was all homeless folks. And the homeless folks are becoming increasingly not Hawaiian, so meaning there's a lot of white folks.
Oh yeah.
And other, and one of my cab drivers was telling me, they're basically, he said they're giving them a one-way ticket to Hawaii, the homeless population, and I was like, who is they? Is it the state, city, nonprofit?
They're homeless.
Who is it? And he's like, I don't know. I mean, I think he says he thinks it's a state. I think it's a state too.
California's in a big way, I guess.
A big way, yeah. And another driver said that he asked a houseless person themselves, like, how did you get here? And they're like, they give us one-way tickets to come here because they don't know what to do with us, because they're a lot of times hard substance users. So it's not just like chronic homelessness, it's untreated mental health, high substance usage, and homeless, all three of those things that are together. And so those parks are becoming like hubs. Yeah. And because also, which they do in so many places, they started to divide the beach rights. Like, only people who come to the hotel can access this beach and these waters, which
they've minimized the public beaches significantly. Yeah.
There's and I went to, again, I was by myself, ended up in like a cul-de-sac that went down to this like public beach, and it was like 2 families fishing, and that looked like Lake Ontario. Like that's what when we go to the beach upstate, like that's what it looked like. It was beautiful and it was clear, but it was like not small or upkept or anything.
Yeah.
But the other thing is the Dole plantation is everywhere. And I went to the first cafe I went to, they had a drink called plantation lemonade, and I was like, why do you guys have plantation lemonade? She's like, oh, because we put sugar cane. I'm like, I don't care about what's in it. I'm like, why did you keep the word plantation? She was like, yeah, some people have asked that. And I'm like, okay, so I'm not the only one and it's still here? I'm like, why? And then there's like this hike called Diamond Head Trail. It's like one of their biggest like hikes. And all they you know what the pillboxes are? Mm-hmm. They have pillboxes everywhere and all these military spots and shooting ranges everywhere.
Well, explain what a pillbox is, because in case somebody listening does.
Okay, well, I mean, how I understand it is like it's a cement structure on the top of craters and on top of mountains. They're essentially like military lookouts, and so they have them at the highest points. They have them all around, and they're like, because Hawaii probably has the most trails of like any state. There's just trails everywhere. And so I hiked a couple of them, and you see these pillboxes, and you can climb up to them and stand on top of them, and you can see like all around you. And at the most famous like trail, which is like you're just walking with like hundreds of people. It's not a hike experience. Dole had like set up this whole like visitor station sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, does anybody know the history of Dole?
Yeah.
Like, how dare you? And then people have these like Dole Hawaii shirts on, and I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah,
and so obviously
Sanford Dole is one of the guys who led the coup to usurp the Hawaiian Kingdom and form the Hawaiian Republic, which and again Sanford Dole is that's the Dole family, and so for those that don't know that's the history about toppling the Hawaiian Kingdom, replacing it with a bunch of white guys who some of them were born. I mean, they were Hawaiian subjects of the kingdom because they were born there, lived there their whole lives. They mounted this coup against the Hawaiian Kingdom, and then told the United States, we want to be annexed. And that was the whole basis for the United States to fraudulently claim Hawaii as a U.S. territory. So Dole, that name Dole, is tied. I mean, you can't separate the Dole name from the illegal occupation of Hawaii.
And there was very much like a sense of pride connected with Dole, of like, yeah, the Dole plantations are here, and I'm like, why are we still using the word plantation? First of all, like, this can't be an East
not all
Coast thing.
plantations were tied to the slavery that people associate with.
It doesn't matter.
No, but I'm just saying, the whole idea of a plantation is just that it's a farm. But you're right. I mean, where even in Hawaii, what ends up happening with the plantation is you end up having the workers, and then of course the plantation owners. So you end up with this huge disparity in class, in income, station in life, and the whole bit. So that plantation does, I hear you, it does that kind of catch you.
I mean, okay, fine, like over semantics, like it may be a fine word, but like it's not a good word to hear.
Yeah.
The other thing that one of the biggest takeaways too is like the level of community there, regardless, is astronomically something that I have never felt in the United States before, anywhere I've went, because it's a sense of community. My Uber drivers, whatever, cab drivers, were half women, which it doesn't happen here. Mm-hmm. And there's such a level of like brothers and sisters, and like as a woman walking where I'm like, my eyes are wide open because I'm a woman walking somewhere, but they're like, oh, I mean, they're like, this isn't New York.
Yeah,
like, this is Hawaii. You don't have to worry about that. Yeah. And they're like, because Hawaii has this culture, whatever. And then I was also thinking, everybody says aloha. All of the streets are in like Hawaiian languages. So it's very strange. Like the level of colonization over the language is so common. Nobody thinks about it. We can't understand why we're fighting for Mauna Kea, but yet they'll use like the language of the Hawaiian language, but they won't attribute it to like, oh yeah, and
Culture.
it came from
Yeah,
an
yeah.
indigenous group of people who are still here fighting this mountain.
They've totally
but that doesn't
appropriated
matter.
all the imagery of the
1000%.
indigeneity and everything else, and they've colonized that, and yet won't attribute any of the value that goes to the culture behind it. So yeah, I mean, that's exactly the sense that I get.
The history of surfing there was the same thing, like with the land of like, it just blew up from surfers doing. There's technical different types of surfing, but Hawaiians weren't allowed into it. And then there was this guy named Eddie, and then he just surfed his way out and started going in and winning. And I mean, there's a whole he ended up dying and stuff. There's a whole story around him, but yeah, there was a lot of racism there that obviously nobody will talk about. And
and as we go forward with future shows, obviously you probably gained some insight not only for what you did learn, but you probably have more questions than you had before you went now.
I mean, well, alone because I didn't know the military bases there, and that makes it complicated of like, we want to fight for Mauna Kea versus like, okay, well, the military also feeds us, so like, don't bite the
well,
hand
and the
that feeds you,
problem with even this technological advances that they associate with these telescopes and all this research, there's a direct connection between not just because Trump started his new space force, but I mean, invariably these technological advances end up having military applications, and so it's nice to say, we're interested in science, and everybody those who oppose the 30-meter telescope flat out say, look, we're not anti-science, but why do we have to bear the cost of this stuff, and where does that science turn into not only human benefit but benefit to us? I mean, and you're right, there's already 13 telescopes up there and that was all give an inch, take another inch, and all of the so-called job creation that was supposed to come with it doesn't come with it, and so even when people try to assess that this multi-billion-dollar project in the 30-meter telescope is going to be a boon economically, it not for the folks there. I mean, there are countries that'll send their premier scientists, and there will be some students that get to study there, but it's not going to be, I mean, other than a few people mopping floors and that kind of stuff. I mean, that's what you're going to end up having as far as the quality of the job.
Also, one of the drivers who was a woman was there the day before with her daughter. She brought her daughter there, and she was the only one. I totally forgot. She was the only one who was like, absolutely, I don't support that, and we're there because like she was indigenous Hawaii, and and like it doesn't even like, so we're not even talking about the dissemination of like monetary gains or information or whatever. The amount of physical damage, obviously, that this telescope is going to do to be how much drilling they're going to have to go deep into, how much gas from trucks and fuel and all of those fumes, and like, so vehicle wear and tear, human wear and tear, all of the stations that they're going to have to put up to bank this, like this is going to be devastating to this mountain, this sacred place, this.
And of course, you can't ignore the fact that to build this thing, they have to change all or create exceptions to all the building codes, because they're going to build something that's 8 stories tall. It's going to dig into the ground deep, so it's going to be multi-stories below the ground, and it's on a volcanic mountain. I mean, so there's seismic issues. So, but all right, we only got a few minutes before we go to the bottom of the hour and take a break and go to caller. So a couple of things I want to do. First, I want to remind people, you can become a WBAI buddy anytime. So you can call the pledge line 516-620-3602, or go online to www.give2WBAI.org and become a WBAI buddy. I would greatly appreciate if you listed this show as the reason you want to become a WBAI buddy. We're among the leaders in terms of shows that actually have buddies associated with their shows, but we need more. And so if you want to make a monthly donation as small as, look, it could be $5 a month, but if you make that monthly contribution with your credit card or your checking account, that becomes revenue that we can count on. So again, I can't say enough about how much I'm asking you to become a WBAI buddy and do it in the name of the show. Other thing, I just in passing, and I'll probably talk about this more next week, but I said in the promo that I was going to mention the latest battle with Andrew Cuomo in the state of New York, between the Senecas and the state. So the New York State Thruway, which most people here in the city associate with that run of, the road that goes up to Albany. Well, it actually turns west and becomes Interstate 90 and runs all the way across the state. And
that's the toll one,
and that's a
through
toll
Rochester,
road.
right?
Yeah. So it runs through, Syracuse, Rochester, Buffalo, and then continues on and goes to, it's an interstate, goes all the way across the country. But after it passes through Buffalo, there's a 3-mile section of that thruway that crosses the Seneca territory of Cattaraugus, where I live. And that 3-mile section of Interstate 90, the New York State Thruway, is the worst section of the whole entire thruway. Why? Because the governor of the state of New York refuses to repair it. And it is literally deteriorated to the point where they've actually put speed limit signs down to 45 miles an hour on the thruway. A 65-mile-an-hour interstate, they've reduced it 20 miles an hour because it's unsafe. Now, not only is it unsafe because of the amount of asphalt that kicks up and stuff, but there's also a bridge that hasn't been maintained. The bridge that goes over the Cattaraugus Creek. And I'll tell you, the two bridges that went over the thruway on the territory, the Cattaraugus Territory of Seneca Nation, Andrew Cuomo refused to fix that for many years until Obama finally said, look, we've appropriated funds for that. You can't misappropriate those funds. So he was scolded by the President of the United States because chunks of those bridges were falling onto the thruway. So right now the thruway is in such bad shape. And he says that he refuses to do it until the Senecas pay gaming revenue to him. Oh, he says, I don't want to give them another excuse not to pay us. So I don't even understand that logic. But this is his attempt to strong-arm Senecas by not repairing the 3-mile section and maintaining the 3-mile section of thruway that crosses on an easement. Again, that's not state land. It's Seneca land. And he refuses to do it. And here's the crazy part of it all. What's an easement? An easement is when you grant them the right to put a road on your land.
So the territory granted the
Senecas
right?
give it to them. They were squeezed for this thing back in the 50s.
I'm sure.
$70,000 for a 3-mile stretch of a highway. An absurdly small amount of money.
Right.
In fact, Senecas have probably paid more than that back in tolls. So essentially the state got that land for free and makes billions of dollars off of toll money, trillions of dollars off of economic commerce that strolls through there.
Yeah.
But here's the crazy part of it all. Again, look, I followed with some pleasure watching this battle with Chris Cuomo over being called Fredo. Have you followed this at all? Fredo
I didn't even realize what's happening.
Fredo's the weak brother of the Godfather, right? The Corleone, right? So Chris Cuomo gets into it big time with this guy who calls him Fredo. And look, my props to Chris Cuomo. But then I hear Andrew Cuomo make comments. He goes, "Well, I never even watched The Godfather." Because it's a negative stereotype for Italian. I never watched The Sopranos. I never done this. Well, I gotta tell you, Andrew, maybe you should watch this, because if you think shutting down or making the section of thruway that goes through the Seneca territory is your attempt at strong-arming Senecas, you suck at it. I mean, you just suck at it. I mean, here's the thing: we don't drive that section of road. It is a thruway that crosses Seneca territory. We don't drive it. Everybody else drives it. I mean, people who come into New York cross it. People who leave New York cross it. But locals, we don't get on the thruway to make a local drive. So we would never get on the thruway to get from one section of the Seneca territory to the other section of the Seneca territory. If we go towards Buffalo, we get on the exit that is closer to Buffalo. If we're heading out towards Erie, Pennsylvania, we get on the thruway there. We never travel that 3-mile section. It's actually probably an 8-mile section altogether, but 3 miles of it across Seneca territory. We don't travel that road. You're not hurting us any. In fact, by you letting this road go to absolute crap, you're encouraging people to get off the thruway. And if they get off the thruway, that means they drive through U.S. Route 20, which goes through Seneca territory, and they patronize our businesses. So you know what? Keep doing what you're doing. And in fact, let's just hope, though, that nobody gets hurt. Because if the bridge that goes over the Cattaraugus Creek is in any way, shape, or form near the condition of the bridges that cross over the thruway that you refused to fix for years until the President of the United States actually made you do it and the Department, U.S. DOT made you do it, then it's dangerous. My advice to the Senecas: put up a billboard at the Eden Angola exit and at the Silver Creek Irving exit, and you tell people get off the thruway. It's dangerous. Get off the thruway. It's too dangerous to travel. And welcome to Seneca territory. That's what the Senecas should do.
Isn't 90 from like Syracuse through the Waterloo to Rochester? Isn't that not a great area either?
Well,
look, I mean, sure, not in comparison,
the
but
thruway is not rated very highly in terms of road condition anyway. Even though, again, they collect billions of dollars in tolls.
Because we go to 87 and then sometimes we'll go on 90, but I feel like the 87 90 is brand new paved. Yeah. But that's it. Because when you go down 80, I don't know if you ever go on 81 at all.
Yeah,
but I have to go to 81 to get my parents.
Yeah.
That's not that great either.
No, the interstate system through the state isn't very good.
I will say Pennsylvania's is a nightmare. But, I mean, that's not even our state, but yeah.
But, but the idea that this guy is specifically, and he goes on the record and says, no, I'm not going to fix the thruway. I mean, it's a congressman, a Republican congressman in Western New York, Tom Reed, is actually calling for an investigation with the U.S. Justice Department on Andrew Cuomo for not fixing the road. And,
do it.
And of course, they're planning to play politics in the whole thing, but still. I
mean, yeah, it's not like
by
they're
all
like...
means, by all means, because there may be not only some specific laws being broken, but clearly there's a liability issue. And again, for this guy to think that this is the way I'm going to squeeze the Senecas, I'm going to let the thruway that crosses their territory, I'm going to make them look bad. You don't make us look bad by your highway, your toll road. I mean, the crazy part is when you travel that section of road, you actually have to pay to travel it. You have to pay somebody to slow you down to 45 miles an hour because the road is in such rough shape. So I want to mention it on this week's show. I mentioned it on my show back home, but you can look for this news. Look at it's been covered pretty widely in Western New York, and I know this is New York City. You don't hear much about highway issues outside of this region, but we all are familiar with the thruway, and we all are familiar with paying tolls and fees and all this other stuff. This is a section of toll road that, frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if the Senecas don't do something more drastic, like they take control of the highway back, or perhaps fix it themselves and put a service area that'll turn into a major fight with the state. But the idea that the governor's trying to tie the condition of the thruway and his refusal to repair and maintain it with gaming revenue. The ironic part is the arbitration panel that ruled in the governor's favor and said, well, the Senecas don't pay, then they're getting something for nothing. And of course, the something they're talking about is this BS exclusivity that the state offered. Well, if that's the logic, then how is it that the state has a 3-mile section of road that they got for nothing from the Senecas and don't pay anything back? They don't give any percentage of tolls. They don't give anything back to the Senecas. And the reality is, we have actually language in treaties that say we should never be required to pay a toll traveling a road, and yet we do. So, I mean, the absurdity is at so many different levels with this one.
Also, how can he justify, like, okay, if you don't give us back the money, then I won't fix it? But the amount of damage that has been done dates before this whole conversation of paying back the money.
Yeah, this section of road has never been maintained.
So this isn't a scapegoat for the money issue. Like, you need to make safe for everybody who drives on it.
It is a bizarre leap that this guy has made. And look, and I know how some of you callers out there, but there's no other way to explain this thing other than blatant racism. Sorry, I know. Yeah, there I did. I pulled the race card out. I mean, when you've got somebody who looks at a specific people, a specific group of people that are ethnically different than them, and you can target them or attempt to target them in such a way. This is, again, a poor way to try to strong arm Senecas, because most of the Senecas are saying, we don't care. Hopefully nobody gets hurt, but we don't care that the roads go on to crap.
Right.
So, all right. Anyway, let me we'll go to a break. When we come back, we are going to go to your calls. 212-209-2877. That's the number to call to be a part of the show. Sorry for dragging on so long, but a lot to get to. But anyway, 212-209-2877. That's the number to call to be a part of the show, and we'll take your calls when we come back. This is John Kane with Johnny Rice, and this is Let's Talk.
I'm loving the water. so calm to me. Love in the water, it comes so naturally. It's a gift from my mother, can't deny. The day we lose it is the day, that's the day we die. No more senseless death, it should have never been. No more senseless death, drinking water that's not clean. It should be right, all humanity, to partly one enough for money, not for greed. Huh. What have we done? Put poison in the heart. Hey! What have we done to our children's future? This madness has gotta stop. This madness has gotta stop. Selling our blood, selling our souls to the very last drop.
All right. Thanks for coming back. This is John Kane with Johnny Rice, and this is Let's Talk. And of course, we are right here on WBAI, in the middle of your FM dial. We are streaming live video on Facebook Live, and of course, you can listen to us if you're out of the range of 99.5 on the FM dial. You can listen to us at www.wbai.org. So we can be heard everywhere, and of course, we can be heard anytime, because you can check us out in the archives on wbai.org, or you can look for our podcast. And we, like I said, we post the video of the show on my YouTube channel, which is Let's Talk Native TV. So there you have it. I do want to encourage people to become a WBAI buddy, and do it in the name of Let's Talk with John Kane. And that way, you give your support to the show, and at the same time, you support all the programs here on WBAI, because that's what this any donation that any show brings is not for the specific show; it is for the whole station. So again, I encourage people to become a WBAI buddy, and then you become a part of the station. You become a member of the station. So that's what I'm encouraging you to do. All right, we are going to take calls. So let me go ahead and give the number out again. It's 212-209-2877. That is the number to call to be a part of the show and to weigh in. We can talk about Hawaii, Shawnee's trip to Hawaii, or we can talk about Cuomo, the road wrecker, as I call him. Well, I guess I could throw, if I want to really get people going, Cuomo, the racist road wrecker. I guess we can call it that, because I mean, he has made some of these racist comments, and again, I can't. I mean, it's almost comical. Listen to him condemn this notion of racial stereotypes, as his brother mixed it up with this guy calling him Fredo, and how much he wants to reject this idea of the media making these stereotypes, and yet he does that to us.
Who's Fredo again?
Fredo is the brother that they kill because he kind of turns on them.
In what?
The Godfather. I'm sorry, The Godfather.
I just watched The Sopranos for the first time in my life.
So The Godfather, Fredo is considered the weak brother. So when this guy, this right-wing guy, comes up to Chris Cuomo in a public event and calls him Fredo, Chris Cuomo goes off on him.
Is Cuomo Italian?
Yeah.
So is the person who called? So that was a racial slur to him, or like?
To call an Italian person Fredo is not only a racial slur, but it's almost a slander within the So yeah, to be called Fredo Corleone is not a compliment. And
the person who called him that was just white.
Yeah, and he was like a right winger and at a public event, and Chris Cuomo almost he was going to kick his ass.
Like
He literally. And so,
He
I mean, it turns
became
into
very
this
ethnic.
bit of a media frenzy. And then Andrew Cuomo, who is Chris Cuomo's older brother and the governor, he weighs in on it with his condemnation of these stereotypes and that kind of stuff. And yet the racist things that he said about and to the Senecas.
Right. That's what you can
makes my head
recognize
explode.
that and have a reaction of being called Fredo, but you don't get any part of your tone deafness.
Yeah, the
in
Senecas,
relation
they
to-
had a history of breaking agreements. Yeah.
or
that was
just
one
the
of
petty,
comments.
like,
Oh, yeah, all of it.
fragility of a man to not repair this road, this state road, and tax
and it doesn't cost. The money's already allocated. I mean, the money's there. I mean, and that's the part that's. I mean, you cannot. I mean, for anybody talks about infrastructure issues, the idea that you intentionally let an important piece of the state's infrastructure in terms of
that
this
also
throughway-
just seems wildly dangerous. It's
Oh,
a highway.
absolutely.
It's not like it's a dead end road.
Yeah,
That's
and
like-
it's not like it's just a 2-lane road. This is a 4-lane highway. All right, we got some callers, so
Lord.
let's go ahead and give it a shot here. Caller, you're up first. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Peter from Glen Ridge.
Hey, Peter.
Hello.
You know what they say, follow the money. In the case of what you said about the telescope, and it applies to the throughway, the question is, whose district is it in? Because what I learned recently, well, and this relates to that there's a 30-foot diameter telescope being built in Chile. And so when you mentioned this telescope in Hawaii, you want to ask is like, what scientific value does it have? We're really not in a position of saying, is it really necessary? You know what I'm saying? But
Well,
then
it's
you gotta ask, well,
a bit of
whose
an
district is.
it's a bit of an international coalition. I mean, they're Japan, Canada, even Canada. I think is second guessing their place in this. But Russia, China. I mean, all these countries have converged, and the reason for doing it on Mauna Kea is because Hawaii is in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, so it has very little light pollution, and Mauna Kea is an extremely tall mountain. I mean, it may be the tallest mountain as far as to go from sea level to from its base, and so it's obviously a perfect place for viewing the sky. But whether it makes sense geographically, it has to make sense from a people standpoint. But you're right. The money issue, even getting back to the throughway issue. It is ironic that it's a Republican congressman that is trying to bring this investigation against, and again, of course, it's a Republican-controlled Justice Department against Cuomo. So there's some politics at play here. And you're right. If this section of the thruway was in a district that was more democratically controlled, because you get out into Western New York and in some of the rural areas, and that's where you get a little bit more, right-wing activism, I guess. And so that may be that. You're right. There may be some the politics even beyond the non-native or beyond the native politics at play here.
Yeah, here in Jersey we have the Hudson-Bergen light rail, and it is such a boondoggle. The cost per mile compared to using a bus. I mean, they had to build a whole bridge for this one station, like 20 people a day use it. Come on, give me a bus. You know what I'm saying? It's like, whose district? Who's really in on this,
Well, I think the other part of it, too, is like we're not thinking about the environments as so much like human rights issues anymore. And that's the problem with corporations and where we are now and with the highway or with the telescope. It's not a matter of like what's best for humans. It's a matter of what's best for a monetary gain, and that's it. And that's why we're in this constant struggle with water, with climate change, with gas, with glaciers melting. Like everything is it's spiraling out of control because of the global economy, because our economy, because what's most important, always will be important, is a monetary gain as opposed to what's best for.
And of course, when you
the
say
health of
monetary
human.
gain, it's short-term monetary gain because people want to they want returns on their investment. And I got to mention, and Reggie pointed this out the other day, but let's not ignore the fact that as we talk about a burning rainforest in Brazil, that we don't ignore that there's a much larger rainforest that has been burning for a longer period of time in the Congolese rainforest. And it's like everybody's ignoring the fact that Africa is being torched for some of the same reasons, to clear lands for development and mostly big ag development. And look, folks, we are driving this thing off a cliff in ways that people can't even imagine. Peter, I want to thank you for the call. Let me see.
Right,
I
sure.
don't know if we got anybody else lined up. Yeah, we'll go to another caller. Caller, you're up next. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, John Kane, how you doing? This is Charlie from Roslyn Heights. How you been?
Hey, Charlie, how you doing?
Listen, 2 quick points. Listen, last time I spoke to you, there was a woman who came on and spit on the ground and said, I don't want that guy speaking. I hate this guy. All he does is want to hear his voice. And, I was a little hurt because you didn't defend me. You didn't say, okay, you could disagree with him, but, everybody has a right.
No, I did. In fact, I said that I try to give people enough time to get their point across. So I mean,
John, I would love to debate her if I could get her on the phone. WBAI should have debates where they hook up the phones where I could debate them. No, there's nothing wrong with that. But anyway, my second point is you mentioned Fredo before with that comment, right?
Yeah.
Listen, I'm Italian American, even though I'm an Americanized Italian American because I grew up in Long Island. The Italian Americans in Brooklyn don't consider me Italian, but anyway, I am Italian American. So I got to step back 2 steps and say, if I want to talk about this Fredo thing, I got to be objective because my race is a human race. My race is not the Italian American race; it's the human race, and I'm proud for what Italy, contributed to humanity, which is a lot. But anyway, I got to step back 2 steps and say,
you're not talking about that Columbus guy, are you?
I would love to.
No.
Right now, I'm talking about Fredo.
All right. Get back to Fredo. We'll leave Columbus for another day.
I got to be objective, and I am being objective. I think when I say this, that there's a double standard against Italian Americans. I don't think that people.
Okay, but I want you to get to your point about having being objective about Fredo. For one thing, it's a fictitious character, but what's your point about Fredo?
No, I'm talking about the Como thing. Wasn't Como upset about that comment? Were you talking about that?
Yeah. He was pissed because this guy intentionally called him Fredo to try to insult him.
Right. I think he has a
right.
right.
I do too. So
not only that Fredo was a stupid person, but it's an Italian thing. It's like me saying to an Irish person, this guy's a stupid potato, or potatoes have something to do with Irish, history.
Look, and I'm not condemning any of that. In fact, I was impressed at Cuomo's reaction. I was really, my bigger issue is when his brother weighs in and talks about, his position on these derogatory stereotypes, and yet ends up offering racist comments towards the Senecas. But Charlie, I appreciate your call. I do got a couple of calls I want to try to get to before we run completely out of time. So thanks for the call, and thanks for listening to the show. All right, caller, you're up next. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello, John. I'm from Cliffside Park. My name is Vincent.
Hey, Vincent.
Listen, just a comment on all of this, who's this benefiting, whether it be the military-industrial complex, whether it be the national security agencies, whether it be this telescope. Who's benefiting from it? It's the kids, man. It's the kids coming out of college. They need jobs, and they're getting work with these people. You're going to have a really hard time convincing them that they should walk away from these jobs.
But the jobs are limited, and they're going to be a limited time. The profit that there's gained from this telescope isn't going back to the community that it's built on, and these jobs, they're not sustainable jobs forever, especially at the mercy of the desecration of a mountain and of a community.
And there's 13 telescopes on that mountain already, and it isn't exactly this gateway for all these kids to realize their dreams in science. So I don't know. I don't necessarily. This is not the boon for an upcoming generation. And you know what? There are places like the Canary Islands. There are other places that say, "Look, we'll take it here." Well, then build it someplace where it wants to be, where people want to build it. Because you know what? It doesn't matter where it's built, because the elite, even the elite kids, as you say, that are going to benefit from this, they'll travel the world to get to where it's got to be. So it doesn't have to be in Hawaii.
Like you said, there are 13 telescopes there now, and they're not. I mean, there's of course going to be like these educational opportunities to learn from, but the telescopes pay $1 in rent per year. That's not helping anybody in the community. And the kids, like you said, the kids of Hawaii and of Kauai more specifically, they're not benefiting from this. And add salt to wound, or whatever that saying is, it's on their sacred land and their sacred properties. So you're echoing the thing that I was saying is what's wrong with what's happening right now is you're like, well, let's prioritize temporary jobs, temporary influx of money at the state of the rest of the world.
I mean, let's see, even when I think about what Trump has tried to do with the Endangered Species Act, now he's trying to up the relevance of the economic gain for depleting an endangered species. So he wants to put a higher value in the evaluation of what becomes an endangered species based on, well, what's it going to cost us economically? I mean, that's where it comes down to. Look, do we got another caller? Because we're just about out of time. All right. I do have to close it up. Again, Vincent, thanks for your call. I don't agree with you. I don't think this is about some great benefit to a bunch of kids, college kids or otherwise.
And you can also say a bunch of kids are against this too because they know what it means for the future of humanity to keep prioritizing small amounts of money over life, over Earth, over animals, over humans. We're messing with all ecological systems.
As significant as this mountain is in terms of its, it's amazing, but it is a very delicate ecosystem that could wouldn't take much to throw it out of whack.
You can't even say I wanted to bring my dog to Hawaii. You can't. You get customs going into Hawaii because of the ecological system is so fragile. And if you bring a dog in, they have to go and get quarantined the second they come in because of this thing, because it's an island.
Yeah. All right, thanks. Again, Shawnee, thanks for your update on your trip, and we'll talk more as we go forward. I want to thank those of you who called. I want to thank, again, Jeremiah for joining me last week, and I want to thank you for listening. And again, become a WBAI buddy. Mention Let's Talk, and I will love you forever. But we'll be back here next week. And again, look for my podcast, Let's Talk Native podcast, and for my YouTube videos on my YouTube channel, Let's Talk Native TV. This is John Kane with Shawnee Rice, and this is Let's Talk. Thanks.
I'll hit the fires